What's up, guys? T-Rock 1992 here. For this next video, I am going to be reviewing the films that came out in the month of March. So, this is a late video. It's mid-April already. I've been definitely pretty busy, but I have managed to find some time to do this video. Yeah, the March brought us some pretty good films, definitely. Brought some good critical successes, some failures as films. So, without further ado, I am going to talk about that. So, the movies that I'm going to talk about that first opened the week of March 4th. There's two in particular. London Has Fallen is the first one. This is a movie I did get to see in theaters. I think at the beginning of March or so. It was a couple weeks. It was about a month ago or so that I saw London Has Fallen. London Has Fallen was my first movie in the theaters. I have a review up on my YouTube channel about London Has Fallen. You can find out about that. You can go on that. It's up on my channel and all that. So, London Has Fallen, starred Gerard Butler, Aaron Eckhart, and Morgan Freeman. And this movie is about the attack. Olympus Has Fallen. Well, Olympus Has Fallen was about the White House being under attack. London Has Fallen is about the city of London being under attack, basically. And I really did think it was a good film for sure. And it made money. On a $60 million budget, it made $160.1 million, so it made its money. And critically, it got a 24% on Rotten Tomatoes. This wasn't, so London Has Fallen definitely is not a critical darling of a film. It's not a film that's going to win Academy Awards or anything like that. And I just took the film for what it was. A dumb 90s action thriller. It harkened back to the 80s and 90s action thrillers. It's just mindless fun, basically, for me. And I really enjoyed the movie for what it was. So, I had a good theater experience with London Has Fallen. The second movie that came out the week of the 4th, that I'm going to talk about, is Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. The new Tina Fey movie that came out in March. You know what? Actually, there are three films that I'm going to talk about. London Has Fallen's the first. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot is the second. And this movie stars Tina Fey, Margot Robbie, Martin Freeman, Alfred Molina, Billy Bob Thornton, among others. So, this movie, I think it's about Tina Fey. She's going to Afghanistan to cover a news story, I believe. Something like that, and there's a lot of funny stuff that goes around and all that sort of thing. She covers a big news story in Afghanistan. The movie didn't make a lot of money, I see. On a $35 million budget, it made only $22.8 million. And it's out of theaters now. So the movie didn't make money at all. I mean, you have to consider it a box office flop based on those numbers right there. 7.6 million in its opening weekend. The movie got a 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a pretty solid rating. So, solid rating, not a good box office draw. So, Tina Fey probably isn't too happy about that. A film she's a big comedy star and all that, and this is coming off Sisters, which was, I think it was more of a hit anyway, but Tina Fey and Whiskey Tango Foxtrot didn't extremely work out. And then the last film that I'm going to talk about that opened on the 4th, weekend of the 4th, is the latest Walt Disney Pictures animated film in their classic animated film series, Zootopia. It is, in fact, the 55th animated feature in that animated classic series that began years ago, 1937, with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and now into today with their 55th animated feature. So Zootopia is about pretty much an entire series of animals that they talk, they dress up in business suits, they act like humans do, basically. It's like a world which we think of as populated by humans that animals populate. So, a lot of voice talent in this movie. Jason Bateman, Idris Elba, J.K. Simmons, Tommy Chong is in this movie. He was part of Cheech and Chong, of course. So a lot of voice talent in this movie for sure. It's about a wily fox and a rabbit that have to team up to save the day. A rabbit who's a part of the police force, and a fox that is a con artist. Jennifer Goodwin plays the bunny, who's the first bunny ever to be in the police force, I believe, and then Bateman plays the fox. Zootopia overall has made a lot of money. It's been a big juggernaut. On a $150 million budget, it's made $866.7 million. It has been the success that Disney wanted it to be, for sure. It's been great. And during its run, it was just a box office juggernaut. So it kept being in the top 5 week after week. And it has a rating of 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, so the critics loved it too. So Zootopia, one of the pretty much an A-plus film of the month of March. The films that I'm going to talk about, which came out March 11th, there's 2 in particular that I'm going to talk about. There was this movie called 10 Cloverfield Lane. That's the first film that I'm going to talk about. Produced by J.J. Abrams, who of course has done the new Star Wars Force Awakens and the 2 Star Trek movies. But 10 Cloverfield Lane, I think it's about 2 people are trapped inside a house from what I've heard and all that. But this movie came out, from what I've heard, it was kind of an unknown film. The first trailer for this film released about a month before it came out, I think. But yeah, 10 Cloverfield Lane, $15 million budget. It's made $95.1 million. For that type of film, the budget it was made on, and the trailer not coming out for about a month before the movie started, this movie's made a lot of money for sure. And critically, the movie has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, so one of the good efforts of the month of March for sure. Next film I'm going to talk about is the film Grimsby, the new Sacha Baron Cohen film. This was a film I was kind of excited to see for sure. I didn't get to see it, but Grimsby, man, Sacha Baron Cohen, of course, is a talented comedian. Films like Talladega Nights, Bruno, Borat, The Dictator, just a lot of films that Sacha Baron Cohen's excelled in. This movie also has Mark Strong. He's been in a few movies. Rebel Wilson, the comedian, Isla Fisher, and other actresses as well. actors and actresses. So, yeah, Grimsby's about two brothers, one who's a pretty normal guy and another guy who's a MI6 agent. And they're estranged. They've been estranged for years. They finally meet up, and they have to go save the day, basically. Grimsby, on a $35 million budget, made $27 million overall. Has made $27 million, so not a big box office success for sure. You know, a box office bomb, if you want to say that. And critically, it didn't get a great review, 38% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, this film was one of the lows of March for sure overall. Let's see. The next films I'm going to talk about. The week of March 18th. I'm going to talk about two in particular. The first one is the Divergent series Allegiant. This movie is the third movie in the Divergent series. This has been an entire series. This series started with, let's see, Divergent in 2014. Last year, the Divergent series Insurgent. And now we have the Divergent series Allegiant. The final film is going to be Ascendant. The Divergent series Ascendant, or something like that, you know. But yeah, the Divergent series Allegiant continues on the path of that series. I've heard a lot about this series being compared unfavorably to the Hunger Games series. I really like the Hunger Games. Haven't gotten into the Divergent series yet, so I don't really know a lot about the series. But I really like Hunger Games. And this is kind of like it, you know, kind of compared to it. Unfavorably in some instances. On a budget of $110 million, it's made $146.7 million, so you have to consider that a big underperformance. It's kind of broken even, pretty much. It just, from what I see of it, I think it broke even and all that. So the film wasn't a huge success, maybe not the success that the studio wanted it to be. Critically, it has only a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, so that doesn't help things either. So you have to consider Allegiant one of the lows of March. The next film I'm going to talk about is the film Midnight Special. I've heard a lot about this film being critically lauded for the type of film it is. It's a science fiction drama. It stars Michael Shannon, Joel Edgerton, Kirsten Dunst, Adam Driver. A good cast, a formidable cast. This movie's about a father, I think, who has to protect his son who has extraordinary powers from the government or something like that. So it is definitely an interesting film. The film itself, it's not a big film at all. It's not a big time film, so on a budget of $18 million, it only made $4.4 million, but this movie's not a big... You might think, based on those numbers, that it was a box office bomb, but I don't think it was that type of film. They weren't expecting a lot of money, but what has really gotten it the attention is the critical rating, and the critical rating's an 82%. Again, that might not be the best critical rating, but it is positive, and there's been a lot of raving about this film for sure. So I just wanted to briefly talk about that one. The week of March 25th, there's two in particular I want to talk about here. And the first one is the obvious big hit of that week, and that was Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I saw this movie. It was the second film of March that I saw. Didn't see any films in January or February, but got to see two in March, so that's pretty good. Pretty good for me, considering, there's the nearest movie theater to me is about 30 minutes, 45 minutes away. Something like that, and a ways away for sure. But yeah, Batman v Superman, overall, I talked a lot about it in my review. So, it's obviously Batman and Superman facing off against each other. And it is the first live-action adaptation that has both Batman and Superman in the same movie. So far, on a budget of $250 million, it's made $805.5 million. So it's been a success, for sure. It's made a lot of money, but it also has a dubious record. It is... Let me see here. It made about 166 million in its opening weekend. Very good. It's the 7th biggest opening weekend of all time. But it was about a 68% drop from the first weekend to the second weekend. So the second weekend, it made about 52 million or so. A big drop off from first to second weekend. And that was due to a lot of negative reviews from critics. There were a lot of people that were divisive about the film. Critically, it only has a 28% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Not a very good rating at all. A lot of people expected more from this movie, so considering it's a bit of a disappointment critically and money-wise too, but it's still going to make its money for sure. It will. I think right now, as I'm taping this video, it is the 4th weekend that Batman v Superman came out. I think it's the 4th. And this is the 4th weekend and all that, and it'll make its money for sure, and it's making money internationally too, so it'll get to $1 billion, but probably not too much above there. So, though, it's a big money maker for sure. It is the number 2 box office movie so far, behind Zootopia. It'll catch Zootopia, but for this year so far, but yeah, that's that movie. The most important movie of the week was My Big Fat Greek Wedding 2. Not really. This movie came out. I just wanted to briefly talk about it. It's a romantic comedy. It is the sequel to My Big Fat Greek Wedding, released all the way back in 2002. I just wanted to briefly talk about the numbers. $18 million budget, it made $72.4 million, and critically, it only has a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes. Not like the first one, which it did well. It made a lot of money, that first movie. And it got a pretty good critical rating from what I've heard. This second movie was a step down from it, from what I've heard as well. Actually, my mom went to see this movie, and she thought it was good. She thought it was really good. But I don't know. Maybe I'll catch it at some point, because I am a fan of romantic comedies. So maybe I'll catch it at some point. I have to watch the first one first. I've never seen that one. So there you go. And then the final movie that I'm going to be talking about for the month of March it was released in the final weekend of March, March 30th. The weekend of March 30th, and it is the movie Everybody Wants Some. It is the spiritual sequel, not a direct sequel, but the spiritual sequel to the 1993 classic Dazed and Confused. Directed by the same guy, Richard Linklater. Whereas Dazed and Confused looked at adolescent life in the 1970s. In the 1970s and all that, it had one of the greatest rock soundtracks, one of the greatest soundtracks of all time in a movie. I mean, just some great classic rock music. Dazed and Confused is the name of a song from Led Zeppelin. Everybody Wants Some is named after the Van Halen song, Everybody Wants Some. And this film takes place in the 1980s. And I believe it's a bunch of college players, college softball, college baseball players who, in the 80s, that have to navigate through the, college and playing their baseball and all that sort of thing, and freedom. So, yeah, it was a spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused. This movie, so far, has made $1.1 million on a $10 million budget. But again, it's one of those movies like Midnight Special. It's not really fair to... And it is going to make money, for sure. But it's not extremely fair to label it a failure for the box office because it's not that big of a film. I think it's wide across theaters, I think, but not a ton of theaters, from what I understand. I'm not really sure, but critically anyway, the movie has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. So the critics love it. The critics love this movie, and so I'm actually looking forward to seeing it at some point. I'm not going to see it in theaters probably, but I'll definitely check it out on when it comes out, for sure. But yeah, that's it for March. Everybody Wants Some, the last one that I'm doing, last one, and so yeah, that's it for the month of March. Once May comes around, end of April, May comes around, I'll be talking about the movies that came out in the month of April. And it looks like a pretty solid month anyway, but I will talk about that once it comes up. That is it for this video on my March movies review, overview. D-Rock 1992 out.